Welcome to this very special episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt, for the first time recorded in front of a live studio audience. Yeah. We're here at the iconic CBS Television City, home to so many classic game shows and TV series like The Price is Right, All in the Family, The Carol Burnett Show, and most importantly, the Survivor Live season finales. And with all that showbiz spirit inhabiting these walls, we wanted to make sure to bring you a truly spectacular trio of some of Hollywood's finest actors for tonight's episode. Should I introduce the guests? My first guest tonight is a man whose voice alone is instantly recognizable for millions of fans around the world. He's a Tony nominee, two-time Annie Award winner, children's book author, Jewish comic book writer, and has a new book of personal essays he calls a Tell Some, coming out next month. Please welcome the hilarious Josh Gad. My man.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Get comfortable. My second guest hails from Memphis, Tennessee, where she was both baptized and bat mitzvahed before fully reclaiming her Jewish identity as an adult. She's played a Mormon wife, a fairy tale princess, and a rabbit cop, though today you're most likely to see her playing the role of leader, advocating for Jews at numerous public events and all over social media. Please welcome the enchanting Ginnifer Goodwin. Oh, we love to see it. And last, but certainly not least, she is an Oscar-winning powerhouse who broke barriers as the youngest and first deaf actor to receive the award at just 21 years old. She's got 4 kids, 4 Emmy noms, 18 tattoos, and 1 upcoming PBS documentary all about her. Please welcome the one and only Marlee Matlin. And her fabulous interpreter, Jack.
19 tattoos as of today.
Oh, as of today? I want to start with that. What's the 19th tattoo?
It says it's my granddaughter's name.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thanks for being here, you guys. This is so awesome. I'm so psyched to have all 3 of you. I thought it would be fun to kind of structure this a little bit like a movie or a pilot, something with which you are all familiar. So we're going to do a little in media res. I'm going to start at the climax, and then we're going to jump back to the beginning of the story and go from there. So I'm going to start with October 7th, which was no doubt a turning point for so many Jewish people in so many different ways, and certainly for all of you. How has each of your connections to being Jewish changed since October 7th? And how, if at all, has the way you spend your time changed since October 7th? Josh, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I was hoping you would start with a soft, easy question
right?
like this one.
We only have 90 minutes. I got to get all 3, you know?
I was like, it's either going to be the Holocaust or October 7th. It's like Kol Nidre with microphones. Jesus Christ, Jonah.
Does your Kol Nidre not have microphones?
Do you like applesauce or sour
God.
cream?
All right. Well, October 7th, I was on Broadway doing a show called Gutenberg the Musical. And thank you very much. And we were, part of the opening of the show, Andrew Rannells, my co-star, and I had this joke about, how every big show, every big musical has an important issue. And our important issue was the Holocaust. And it got a big laugh, and everybody was, laughing. It was much funnier when you went to the show. And we did this. I come home, and I see that, I forgot. It was opening night.
October 7th was
October
the
7th
opening night.
was opening night.
Wow.
Suffice it to say, there was no laughter the next day. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go on stage. I had to play a character named Little Nazi Girl in it, which, again, was really funny 24 hours before, and suddenly really difficult to figure out how to navigate this comedy where we were, able to do what Mel Brooks always says, which is weaponize anti-Semitism in a way to make people laugh. and it was no longer funny. And I had a really hard time. And it was really difficult navigating art and commerce simultaneously in real time. And I sat down with the writers and Alex Timbers and Andrew Rannells, and I said, as the Jew here, we need to fix shit now. And we workshopped it. And that day, I told them what I was comfortable with. And they said, do you want to get away from the concept? I said, no, not at all. Now more than ever, I want to lean into it. Yeah. But I just think we need to ease up on the wording. So we changed Little Nazi Girl, strike that, reverse it. It was anti-Semite, and we changed anti-Semite to Little Nazi Girl.
Right.
And
because the Nazis were safe now to make fun of.
Nazis, if Indiana Jones could do it, so could we. And once we made that change, you couldn't laugh at anti-Semite as you're literally seeing acts of anti-Semitism, the likes of which we hadn't seen in years.
How deep into the run are we talking now? Since when these changes are going?
Oh, this was day 3.
Oh, this was right away.
This was right away, and I was very grateful that I had such a collaborative team who was willing to roll up their sleeves and go, okay, we hear you. We're going to do this. We changed some of the wording, and it suddenly got laughs. It invited people to actually engage with the idea of anti-Semitism being real and laughing, sort of like my other show, Book of Mormon, did, at the fact that, like, yes, you can laugh at tragedy and you can do satire, but you have to navigate it gently. And it was a real learning curve, but one I was grateful for. And also, I was pretty scared to leave my apartment during my run of the show. I had to have security because I did the thing you're not supposed to do, which was be Jewish.
Oh, that thing. Yeah.
And it was tough. I made one post after October 7th, which is my heart breaks for the families. That is not a political post. That is not a post that should have any controversy. And I was met with death threats. I was met with rabid anti-Semitism. And I called it out. And I said, this is insanity. The fact that you are making me feel ashamed of giving condolences for people being massacred that's a point of no return. That's a problem. And I felt really uncomfortable in my skin. Yeah. And I felt scared. And I felt really, really sad that I had to feel those things. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and they always said, never forget. And I just didn't realize, I didn't realize that the warning meant because it could happen in your lifetime.
Powerful. I noticed Marlee and Ginny both nodding as you're talking about that post and the backlash you received. Marlee, I was going to ask you about it later, but I'll ask you now. You posted something right on October 7th, very similar to what Josh did. Sending condolences and praying for people who had been harmed. And I saw the comments. Some were supportive, but some were extremely hateful. And, I'm unfollowing you. I used to be a fan. I'm not anymore. What was the effect of that on you?
I posted right away, exactly when it happened. And I just wanted to say, let's call for peace. And the comments were so hateful, full of words that I couldn't even process or look at. After the first time that I felt, just disgusted. And upset my kids who saw the same comments. Mm. And I wanted to sit and have a conversation, but probably for the first time, I just had no words. I was too stunned. I was too stunned to have to, it really literally had to take a break for like a day or two and try to process it and talk to them about it, about the hate that we were experiencing after all those posts of the spewing forth of hate just from one post. And on October 7th, my first thought was, all the people that had to experience, the families, the friends, everything that was going on. And the one thing I kept thinking about were deaf people that might have gone through the same thing, not being aware of what was going on, the lack of communication in the state of Israel, the chaos, the craziness of everything that was going on. That really worried me to the point where it was constantly on my mind.
That's really an interesting and unique perspective to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Ginny, I want to take it back to the original question with you of how has your connection to being Jewish changed since October 7th? Because I asked, have you spent your time since October 7th? How's that changed? Right. And I know those have both been big changes for you.
Well, I think the biggest change has been just people finding out I'm Jewish. Apparently that was something we were supposed to keep our heads down about. I will say it's interesting because I relate to words, specifically the words we use, changed my life as much as October 7th did. I'll say, and social media plays into this too. So on October 7th, I remember when I read the news of what had happened, and which I think was actually October 8th by the time we found out. And I immediately went onto Instagram and I was reposting. I have friends who escaped Iran in the 80s and escaped from the regime that has been in power all of this time. And so I felt in reposting what they had posted, like, surely the world just needs to understand the situation. And that then there will be sympathy for the victims of this. So I started reposting and I immediately got calls from my Persian friends, which I wasn't expecting. Their question was, do you understand what's about to happen to you? Like, we really appreciate the support. However, we think maybe you shouldn't, your career could be at risk for speaking up about this, which took me days to then process. And on October 10th, I remember someone made a Jew joke to me. And I've spent my life laughing at Jew jokes, realizing people didn't know that I was Jewish because I wanted to seem endearing. And it's a form of assimilation, right? I wanted them to, if they found out that I was Jewish, think that I was like hip to it and I could be self-deprecating in a way that made me more appealing, as if being Jewish comes with all these caveats that we are not. And it was the first time in my life, so the Jew joke was made to me, and my comeback was terrible. Like, usually I would laugh, but the most I could muster was, not today! And I realized that, I was done. I was just done with, I was done with all of it. I experienced a lot of anti-Semitism in my childhood. I felt like we were in this other period of, like you were saying about your grandparents, we were never going to have to face these things again in our lifetime. And I thought that what I had experienced, I could frankly write off as being, well, I was living in the South and in a very different sort of political climate. And maybe that's why I experienced what I did as a child. But in all of my trying to assimilate in Hollywood, and for all that I did to keep my head down, I just realized it was on October 10th when these words were used with me that I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't need to apologize for doing something like reposting what my Persian friends experienced escaping Iran in the 1980s. And, my husband and I had to have a lot of talks as I then continued to post. I was asked to post about the hostages. And we talked about, what if I lose my career over this? What if I become some kind of pariah because I am standing up for us? And it came down to yeah, okay, we would be okay if we lost the house and had to pull the kids out from school and all of these things, because the truth is there's only one way this goes where I can sleep at night. Mm-hmm. And that's the way where I not only embrace Judaism, but I fight for the continuation of our people, and I, educate and I celebrate and I advocate. This is the next phase of my being an adult, and there's only that one path where I'm going to feel good about who I am as a human. And thanks. And I simultaneously realized that I had to become, Bret Stephens said, if you follow the writings of Bret Stephens, I think he's
New York Times writer.
Brilliant. And he said in an interview recently, he did an ADL panel of some kind, and he said he hopes that everyone, post October 7th becomes 10% more Jewish. And honey, what do you think? I'm like 1,000,000% more Jewish at this point. Yeah, because my path through this has been, it's not just that I'm going to be loud and proud, because I feel like our job as public figures is to give permission and to show like, we can take this, so you can take this too.
100%.
And it's part of like stepping out into the community and say, like, I'm here, come with me. We're going to do this together. This is a team sport. We all need each other to continue. And it turned into, not only would it be about this advocacy work, but I was really worried that my kids were going to think that my girlfriend Dory, we would always celebrate. She's in the audience here, so I'm pointing at her. If you're not watching the video,
I thought you were just randomly pointing into
space.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just pretending. But I really did fear that my kids were going to think that my friend Dory's house was synagogue, because we would just go to her house for all the Jewish holidays. And I realized that I could not be in control of, if I'm the sole person teaching my children about Judaism, and if going to Dory's house is like their sole experience with like Jewish community, then like I was not giving them the option as adults to lead Jewish lives, and that I needed like real community, lots and lots of people to help me raise Jewish sons, and that was part of my contribution to to the future of the Jewish people is I need good Jewish boys. And so I enrolled them in Hebrew school, and my eldest is already studying for his bar mitzvah, and we're going to go to Israel. And we had stopped celebrating Shabbat every Friday. Now we definitely celebrate Shabbat every Friday night. Like, it really was like, Bret Stephens 10% has nothing on me.
You're nailing it. I want to just follow up on something you mentioned, the fear of your career being affected by your speaking out. Has it been?
No, I've gotten far more jobs in the past year than I have in like 10 years. Exactly,
right? So, yes. I mean, I've talked about that a lot on the show, that I think people
I'm still looking.
I think, the big barriers to entry for people taking that step forward into taking up space and speaking out is, first, they're afraid that startling hate that you get when you do that first post that you've all experienced can be extremely arresting and jarring and scary. And there's also that fear of, this is going to ruin my professional career, I'm going to be blacklisted. But if you push through that, you actually see that it opens up all kinds of new doors and new relationships and new opportunities with people who are appreciative and connecting to what you're doing in an amazing way. So encourage everybody to keep speaking out. Okay, so I said we'd go back to the beginning. So I want to talk a little about your Jewish origin stories. Now we're into Act 1 here. Ginny, you were talking about how you felt, anti-Semitism growing up in the South. You grew up in Memphis, Jewish mother, Catholic father.
He's actually converting right now, but I'm really happy for him.
Converting to?
Catholicism.
Okay. What was that like growing up with both?
I mean, I feel really lucky. I feel like it was always, we are, dare I say, like, we're the people who love arguing about things. And
no doubt.
Like, this was just yet another thing for us to, in a very productive, healthy way, I feel like really like go to the literary sources and go to the rabbis and ask all the questions. And I feel like I was really blessed to have a little bit of everything. But I really gravitated towards the Jewish part of my upbringing. And I was being the South in the 1980s, I was like the one person who was not like an 80-year-old male in synagogue on Friday nights. And I would go with my grandfather, and he would, point to the Hebrew and help me follow along. And it was very, very, it was very meaningful to me. And I felt like it could be a choice as much as it was that I was born into it. It could also be a choice. And it's a choice that I make again and again.
You waited until you were 15 to have your bat mitzvah, is that right? Tell us why.
I didn't feel ready before. I was going to all of these parties, which are nothing like the LA parties. Like, the theme of my bat mitzvah was being Jewish, y'all. And we didn't have like t-shirt shooters or whatever those are. But no offense. But yeah, I went to my rabbi, who's still my buddy. And by the way, like, married my husband and me. And we see him when he visits LA. And I went to him and I said, I feel like this doesn't mean anything to me right now. Can I do this like when I'm feeling it?
It's so mature.
And he said, yeah, you can do it when you're feeling it. And like a year and a half later, I was like, I'm feeling it. I want to have a bat mitzvah.
Amazing. So yeah, as I mentioned, baptized and bat mitzvah, you're closer to God than all of us. Marlee, you grew up with a different kind of intersectionality. You grew up Reform, but your temple in Skokie served both deaf and hearing congregants.
So born and raised in Chicago, yay Chicago. And I was fortunate enough to have a temple that served both hearing and deaf communities. Our rabbi was hearing, but he signed fluently in American Sign Language. And I would attend Sunday school and, half hearing kids, half deaf kids, half hearing adults, half deaf adults, lots of deaf children, some hearing children. And it was my duty to learn Hebrew, and I learned to phonetically speak it. I did not sign Hebrew. Fun fact, by the way, sign language is not universal. So there's not a similar sign language in Israel or in Hebrew. There's like hundreds of sign languages out there. So I learned to speak Hebrew for my bat mitzvah at 13, by the way, Ginny. And I wanted my money sooner, okay? No, listen, I was very proud to be bat mitzvah. But anyway, I was ready at 13, and I attended Shabbat services. After dinner, we would go to temple every Friday night, and I went to Sunday school, and I learned my Hebrew, and I really was so proud as a Jewish person. My bat mitzvah day was really something I'll never forget. I studied my Hebrew. I had the Torah before me. I had it ready for everybody. It was perfect to recite. And when I looked up into the audience, everybody was crying. They were crying. And I'm like, why are they crying? And so I started to cry. And then everybody in shul was crying. And when I looked down, I noticed that my tears had stained the parchment of the Torah. And I began to cry even more. So then I said to the rabbi, I ruined your Torah with my tears. And so after the service was over, I went to the rabbi. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cry on the Torah. I'm so sorry. And the rabbi said, look, Marlee, no, Marlee, your tears are a mitzvah because they are a reminder of the tears of those who were persecuted, the history of Jews, and instead, yours are tears of joy. So, bottom line is, very proud to have had a Jewish learning experience, fortunate enough to have been deaf, and to have had the opportunity to have been taught and exposed to both temple and my family, the Judaism that we all had about being Jewish, and because there's just not enough out there for people who are deaf and Jewish. So I feel very grateful.
Have you ever found another similar community or space or anything that offered that same synthesis?
There's one in Los Angeles, but it's very, very small. I know they have it in New York, maybe 2 or 3 across the country, not many.
We got to work on that.
But in Israel, I've had a chance to visit there, and their deaf community is very, very rich. And they took me to see, I went to an army base, a military base. And what impressed me is that the IDF hired people who were disabled, including people who were deaf, not used for combat, but putting people with disability to work, whether it was in the office, working on computers. They don't do that here with disabled people in the military service here. So I was very grateful for Israel for showing me that.
Amazing. Josh, you grew up, correct me if I'm wrong, you grew up modern Orthodox in Florida to a German mother, Afghan father who grew up in Israel, and grandparents who survived the Holocaust, right?
Beat that, guys. Was your childhood a game of Mad Libs?
So tell us a little bit of what it was like growing up in that game of Mad Libs.
Oh, wow. Now you know why I am the way.
It all makes sense.
So, yeah, my mom was born in Germany. at the end of the Second World War. She was born in 1946 in a place called Weiden, Germany. An Ashkenazi Jew born to two Holocaust survivors who met post-war, Evelyn and Joseph Greenblatt, my heroes, true superheroes. My father was a Sephardic Jew born and raised in Afghanistan. It's wild to say that. But he lived there for 13 years. And then at some point, his parents were like, oh shit, we're in Afghanistan. I don't think they like us here. We gotta get out. So they left. I was born and raised in South Florida. We went to a shul called Young Israel, and it was the kind of temple that separated the men from the women. And it was one of those things where growing up, not being 13, my brothers being 10 and 9 years older than me, respectively, me being the youngest, I was the one who had to turn the lights on and off. And
you were the Shabbos child?
I was the Shabbos child. I was the cheat code for my brothers to watch Smurfs on Saturday mornings. And, you know, I had sort of a tricky relationship with Judaism growing up, if I'm being honest, because when I was about 5 years old, I found out that my dad had cheated on my mom, had another family. And, you know, he was the one who sort of was the Orthodox person. He was the one who, you know, bestowed this on us. We would walk to temple every Saturday. And I went to Hebrew school. And while I didn't know everything, I knew that he had broken one of the 10 Commandments. And I was kind of pissed as a kid. Yeah. And it made me sort of be like, well, this is hypocrisy.
Sure.
And, you know, my family was broken and I was very angry. And I sort of started to have a much healthier relationship with Judaism once I was old enough to have it on my own terms. I also had a bar mitzvah. I loved it. I didn't love the process. I felt bullied into learning my Haftorah and not like it was a communal experience. And so I'm jealous hearing these stories because I'm like, I would have loved that. But again, mine was a childhood of rules and regulations in Judaism. And the spiritual connection to Judaism came much later for me. And when I was able to have that spiritual connection, then I really became a Jew. Then I really became proud. Then I really became inspired by the history, by the traditions, by the faith. And that journey ironically began my sophomore year of high school because I played a character named Tevye. And
heard of him.
Through art, I was able to fall in love with faith.
Amazing. One of the many gifts of the arts. That's a good segue actually into, you know, our act 2, which is, you know, you each sort of had a period where you maybe were not as connected to your Judaism. We've just heard a little bit about yours. Ginny, you said there was like a 10-year period really where you were not connected to your religion or Jewishness. And then in a speech at your temple, you said, I was a Jew by birth, and now I am a Jew by choice. What changed? What happened in those 10 years?
I met my husband. It made me feel real nesty.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's one of the big changes in life that changes your priorities.
Absolutely, because you start thinking about like what it is that's ultimately the most important and self-definition. And so I think that meeting my husband really, had a really profound impact on me in terms of, just rebalancing what it, like not just who I am, but what it is, like what puzzle piece I am in the world. And so I made that choice. And then I will say I had babies and like we had their brisses and everything. And we served the deli meat, which I still think is really weird that we do at those ceremonies. And then I'll say like, I feel like I became like a tired mom and an actress working 16 hours a day. And then I do feel like tradition fell away again after I even gave that speech at Temple. And I feel like there were years there where, like I said, we were not celebrating Shabbat in any kind of meaningful way. And like we would still do holidays, but I don't know, it just wasn't, I got lazy. And I've recommitted to myself. I feel like it's sort of like a cycle with me where, I'm grateful that in the past year I've been able to rebalance again.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. I think for everyone, their connection, and as you go through life, it's different at different times. It's just the way it is. Josh, just to kick it back to you for a second, you have said that it's thinking about your grandparents that at times really pushed you to stay connected to the faith before you found it for yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection to your grandparents and what they mean to you?
They were everything. I mean, so my grandfather was in Auschwitz. My grandmother was in some pretty gnarly camps as well. Both of them escaped on the death march separately. Anybody here with family members who survived the Holocaust? Show of hands. So
Quite a few.
Probably have similar stories to my grandparents. The first time I even understood what the Holocaust was I was walking outside with my grandma. I was very young and I saw a tattoo. And I said, what is that? Why do you have that? And she said, it wasn't by choice. It was forced onto me. And thus began a conversation that would last the duration of her life, where she very openly talked to me about the experience of the Holocaust. My grandfather, I'm fortunate enough, committed to doing a Shoah testimonial, which I come back and revisit once a year. And those stories really, they taught me a lot about what it means to protect your faith, to protect yourself from others who would take that faith away from you, to not live with shame of having people make Jewish jokes at your expense. And without saying it, they survived so I could live. And I don't take that for granted. It's why I speak out. It's why I speak up. It's why I'm here.
Amazing. You're doing them proud.
Never again kind of means now.
Oh, big time.
And I wasn't prepared for that. I don't want this job. I don't want to have to talk to people about why they shouldn't be assholes. It shouldn't be hard, but it is. And I hear my grandparents in the back of my head every day saying, keep going. And for my own kids, it's more important than ever. I have a surviving aunt who's 97 years old, who lives in New Jersey, and she wakes up and she says, it's happening again, isn't it? And I want to defend her, and I want to defend everyone else who shouldn't have to feel that way, who shouldn't feel that there is this hate, this naivete, this ignorance. And that's my battle. And I am wearing it wearily, but proudly.
So to change gears a little bit, I want to talk about marriage, kids. You guys are all married. You all have kids. Well, it's a good thing. What I find interesting, you guys are a tapestry of Jewish identity: Reform, Modern Orthodox, Interfaith. You're all three married to non-Jews. What was the calculus for each of you? You know what?
Hiding
and there's no judgment.
We have to talk about it?
Not if you don't want to.
It's fine.
You know, this is your life. You know, there's nothing wrong with any of it. I just want to get into it.
I can say we have a beautiful Christmas tree. We do a Christmas tree.
Fab. Christmas trees are beautiful.
No. We I've been married for 31 years to
Amazing.
a Catholic guy, and we had both a rabbi and a priest perform our wedding at Henry Winkler's house.
I also got married at Henry
complain there.
Winkler's house. Yeah.
See, there you go.
No.
No. So no, yes, we decided that we would have both a rabbi and a priest to perform our wedding. Unfortunately, the rabbi that I grew up with, that my bar mitzvah with, we had a falling out. And so, and we had someone from Los Angeles, but the priest, I flew out from Chicago because he had a church for the deaf in Chicago, a church for the deaf, Catholic church. So I was very good friends with him, as the deaf community is all very close. So it wasn't Jewish, but, whatever. So we got married at Henry's house, and we talked about our kids. And we did say that we had a discussion that, is my husband here? He's not here, is he? No. Okay, he's not here. So, good. And now I can tell stories.
He'll never be able to find this conversation anywhere.
Stays in this room, doesn't go out of this room. Anyway, so he doesn't know much about this kind of stuff anyway, podcasts. So we talked about our children, and I did mention that they would be Jewish. And he looked at me, and he was like, okay, fine. So they'll be baptized too. And I said, hell no. So I said, no, not happening. And he said, okay. Well then, so I said, they'll be bar mitzvah? He said, no. So I said, okay. Then they're gonna have a naming ceremony? And we went back and forth. And we never really, in all honesty, none of this was ever resolved. So they're just sort of who they are. So we celebrate both holidays. We do all the Christian holidays and the Jewish holidays. And that's that.
Thank you for sharing. Ginny, I'd love to hear from you.
So on top of the fact that I grew up in an interfaith household, which was also just fairly Jewish leaning, my great-grandparents escaped from pogroms in Eastern Europe in the very early 1900s. And they were Orthodox, and they kept Christmas trees in their windows when they moved to the United States. Like, they saw this as a very American, it was a way to feel very American. And I never questioned that we then always had also Christmas trees and Santa Claus and all of this, and celebrated the bunny part of Easter.
Right.
Yeah, the candy part.
The fun part.
Yes, finding the eggs part. I didn't know what it all meant to other people, and that we were stealing this from other people. But when I met my husband, who was all about raising a Jewish family, as that was important to me, he actually, I hope this is okay that I'm going there, honey.
We love it.
Yeah, don't worry, he's not there. What happened?
Go
what
join
happens on the
Marlee's
stage?
husband
What
outside
happens
of
on
the
stage?
theater.
Let's leave the stage.
They'll get a drink after.
He asked my rabbi when we were getting married if he was interested in converting. And the rabbi said, I don't think it's time. He was like, you don't need to convert for Ginny, and we can have more conversations about your converting. But I, as your rabbi, don't need you to convert in order to, have this relationship with your family and to marry you guys under the chuppah, which was actually Josh's grandmother's tablecloth that we used for our chuppah. And right. And then he actually revisited this after October 7th. Josh said, I'd really like to talk about converting again. And there are a lot of reasons, including fear. And he was somehow in conversation with my now 8-year-old. And this was, he was 7 years old at the time. And he said, Daddy, I don't want you to, this is my kippah wearing youngest. And he said, Daddy, I don't want you to convert. And Josh said, well, why not? And he said, I love you just the way you are. And he said, Josh is saying that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to him. And it's a conversation that we've revisited again and again, but it's never been if Josh if he's ever feeling it, it's like me with my bat mitzvah. If he gets to a point where he's like, I'm feeling it, then I will throw the party with the deli meat, if that's what you do. However, I don't I'm not making a comment about his private parts. But
Nobody thought you were until you said that.
well, because I mean, I made the comment earlier about the bris and I'm just taking it back. If you can, never mind. So I'll be there with bells on, with Christmas bells on. But I
Silver bells, if you will.
Yes, but yeah, it just this way it just works for us. It just
Amazing.
works for us.
Great. Josh, kicking it over to you.
I too married a Catholic. It was definitely hard because in my mind, again, growing up the way I grew up, I was only ever going to marry a Jewish woman. And sometimes you can't help but fall in love with who you fall in love with. And that was a hard thing to navigate because I felt pressure from my grandparents.
Sure.
And I felt like I was breaking my grandmother's heart. And it was really painful. And I had a conversation one day with my Nana. And I said, look, I'm in love with her. It was a very Fiddler on the Roof conversation. You're like, little bird, little... And actually my grandmother's Jewish name was Chavala, which made it that much more strange. And I said, I didn't mean for this to happen, but I love her and I really can't and won't marry her without your blessing. And she came around. My grandfather was like, oh yeah, fine, that's great. She came around and she said that she approved. And then she died the week of my wedding. A week before, I got a call and she passed away in her sleep. And I was so grateful that I had that closure, that I had that gift of acceptance, because I don't know that I could have gone through with it without that. Similarly, I'm raising my girls Jewish. My mother-in-law is very old school Italian Catholic, speaks Italian, lives with us now. And I always think back to my grandfather telling me the story of being in the camps with Catholics, Italian Catholics. And every day the Jew would be in the corner being like, why us? Why us? Why this? And then he would hear the Catholics being, Porto Maria, Porto, what did they say? Porto Dio, Porto Modana, which is a term I will not translate here. But it was the same sort of, there's so much in common. There's so much communal anguish. There's so much communal joy. There's so much communal eating. There's so much communal guilt that it felt familiar. And it felt really nice to learn about another culture. And my wife was so supportive of allowing my girls to grow up Jewish because she knew it was super important to me. And I'm very grateful for that.
Everything you're saying is resonating hard with me. I married an Italian Catholic, now Jewish. Weekly shout out to Courtney. There she is.
Did I say that right? Porco Dio, Porto Modan?
Porco.
Yeah, okay.
She's like Italian American. She don't know. They're the ones who pronounce all the things weird that none of the Italians pronounce it the same way, like mozzarella, and the Italians are like, what?
Jersey Shore. The week that I met my wife's parents for the first time, somebody came up to me and they're like, here's something you should say to them. They'll love it. And I was like, oh, great. So I go up to these old school Italians and I go, ciao, mangia bene caca forte, which means eat well, shit well. And she looked at me and she goes, I was like, oh.
With such gusto.
Yeah. That I learned correctly.
This is a free skate question for anybody. Any favorite family Jewish traditions that you guys like doing with your own families or ones that you had growing up? Just something to share with us.
I mean, we play Rummy Cube on Fridays.
Nice. Gotta have a nice little Shabbat board game situation.
on Passover, we would beat each other with leeks. Is that a tradition anyone else does?
Yes, that's a Sephardic thing.
Yeah, it's a Sephardic tradition. And I would have like welts. Like
Really
we
going
went
for it.
for it. Like my brothers and I just truly like, boom. And then I did Passover here and I brought this to like a friend's house and they were like, what the fuck are you doing, man? They were not impressed. They were like, why are you hitting my kids with vegetables?
It's meant to be like the slave masters beating the slaves.
Yes.
No?
Does not play as well in Ashkenazi households.
Yeah, right?
My favorite thing is that I've been able to, I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. One is 12 years older. One is 8 years older. And I was born in the 60s. And because I was home by myself mostly, because the two older brothers were out of the house. But I think I remember, I'm always looking for Hanukkah gifts, searching the house for Hanukkah gifts, trying to find it. And so one day I was bored and I was looking and we had a crawl space under our house. And so I went into the crawl space and I opened the door and there I saw. And I said, what is that? So I went to my mom. I said, Mom, come here. Take a look at what's down here under there. What are all those plants? And my mother's like, plants? All lit up pot plants that my brothers had planted in the crawl space while I was looking for Hanukkah gifts. Both of my brothers had this giant farm growing underneath the house, and they wanted to kill me while I was looking for Hanukkah plants.
You found
So
the
there you go.
Hanukkah jackpot.
What happened to the plants?
Seth Rogen bought them all.
What happened? Oh, well, of course, Mom threw them out. So anyway. Sorry.
Okay, so now bringing it back to Jewish advocacy stuff, sort of where we started. Josh, not new for you. You've been speaking out about this stuff, as you said, for a while.
Guys, my mom was a proud member of Jewish Federation when I was growing up. It was from the time I was like 5 years old. I remember the Jewish Federation, everything around our house, all of the material, all of the literature. No, I've been advocating passively, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that?
I've always felt like it was something I had to do. I had to advocate. I had to talk about Judaism. I had to communicate what it means to be Jewish, communicate and I don't say this jokingly, communicate to others what it means to be anti-Semitic, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize they're engaging in anti-Semitism.
That I actually wrote down a quote that you have from something you posted online. I'm getting tired of having to explain how anti-Semites are being anti-Semitic. Figure it out or don't, but stop coming to us to explain why your behavior isn't what it so clearly is, which is great. What were you seeing or getting thrown at you that prompted you to, put your foot down on that one?
What wasn't I seeing? I mean,
It's just stuff online?
It's stuff everywhere. It's all around me. It's in our community. It's in the same people I advocate for and with and alongside. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to stand with others firmly and unequivocally and then hear their silence when it's your turn. It's really tough. That's really tough.
I think a lot of people here can relate to that.
And so then I've become an activist because now I don't feel like I just need to. I feel like I desperately want to, because I have a position to speak out. And again, it comes back to the fact that nobody spoke out for my grandparents. Their lives were taken from them. They were forced into, first they were forced into compounds, ghettos, with barbed wire fences, and stripped of their jobs, stripped of their identities, and then stripped of their families, stripped of their clothing, stripped of their hair, stripped stripped of their legacy and taken to barbaric camps where at best you would starve and leave, with maybe one or two family members, and at worst, it would be the end of your name. That was my legacy. That happened 2 generations ago. And I'm not gonna sit here and fucking let that happen again. So
That's right.
That's why I speak out, because I have a microphone, because I have a platform, because I know the consequences of not speaking out, and I know that people are scared. I get it. I'm not doing this because it's thrilling.
It's not a great time.
No, it's not a great time. It's a bummer. I would so much rather be rolling around in that basement at your house than here right now. But
in the crawl space.
In the crawl space. But your brothers sound dope.
I wish it was still there, not there anymore.
But we're all here because we know the stakes, right? We're all here because we're community and we have each other's backs. And I can't tell you how many times somebody comes up to me on the street and says, thank you. Thank you for using your platform. And it makes me sad that people need to thank me, because you shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to be doing this. But I promise to keep doing it as long as I can and as long as I have to, which may be at this point in my whole life.
When people express fear that I'll be in conversation with, that we're heading towards another kind of Holocaust, the reason it's not going to happen is people like you 3 on the couch saying it's not going to happen again, which they didn't have last time.
That's right.
Yeah, I believe that very strongly.
I mean, thank goodness to UTA, who sends me out to the federations all over the country. Thank you, UTA, because I've been speaking to federations everywhere. Really, thank you for that opportunity. It's really important to do the old school way of meeting people in person instead of posting online. I'd rather meet people in person.
Marlee, you have obviously been a hugely influential and involved activist for deaf and disabled community at large. How have those communities responded to your public support for Israel and the Jewish people?
You probably wouldn't believe this, but the largest number of those people are anti-Semitic in the deaf community.
What do you think that's about?
Probably for a lot of reasons. They're uneducated. They don't have the opportunity they're not exposed to what is really going on in the world. They don't have the opportunity to overhear what's going on. They really feel, I felt the hatred towards the Jewish community on a lot of people's behalves. And yet there are allies in the deaf community. It's the same as it is in the hearing community.
Right, I was gonna say, it sounds very familiar.
People they're not willing to pay attention, not willing, for whatever reason, they're not willing to accept a different point of view. There are people there are Jews who are really, 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 like Josh, very outspoken, who make a point of making noise and saying, you know what, don't fuck with us. And I'm grateful for them, because we need them.
Yeah. Eventually, we need everybody, but it's good to have some people on the front lines. Yeah. Ginnifer, you have been doing so much advocacy, especially over the past year, in so many different ways. Especially, you've done a lot speaking up for the hostages, which is actually how you and I met at the home of Ashley Margolis when she was hosting some of the hostage families whose kids are still in captivity. Who are you trying to reach with your advocacy? Like, are you thinking of a specific audience or group or person?
Yes, I am.
And are you getting
we
them
haven't
to them?
had this conversation before, which is what it seems like you are leading me to tell the story I am about to tell.
I am.
However, we have not had this conversation before. I got a phone call from someone I did not know, who was involved with the families and friends of the hostages, now known as the Bring Them Home Now, the Hostages Forum. And it was in early days of releasing videos. And he said, I would like you to make this video where you are taking on the voice of one of the little girls who's being held hostage and speak as if you are her, and we're hoping that this will connect with people. And at first I said, absolutely not. My fear was a video of an actress acting like a little girl was going to appear opportunistic and that was going to do more harm than good. And also I said to him, I mean, Hamas is not going to let her go because Ginnifer Goodwin made a video like talking about her favorite, this little girl's favorite singer. And I don't understand how this is going to make any kind of difference in the world of what has happened October 7th and anti-Semitism. And he goes, no, here's the thing. He said, you're making that video it's going to make me emotional. There's a chance that it will make one member of her family feel like someone out there is listening. And I was like, I'm in, whatever you need. And I did learn I had to turn my comments off of social media because that's not a healthy place for discourse in any way. But that was kind of it for me. It wasn't like the audience for me was frankly like just maybe possibly. Have you ever read Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger? I just am putting this together now because that was like my favorite book as a teenager.
I read it a long time ago, yeah.
Had never thought about this until this moment. But remember, he has the whole thing, he's in the bath and Franny's sitting outside the bath and there's the conversation.
You're looking at me like I didn't just say I read this a long time ago.
But there's something about but if you can reach one person in the audience, just one, then you're doing God's work. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, so my audience was really... It was really just her family. It was just like maybe someone in her family will feel like someone is listening from the other side of the planet. And it's just that community thing again.
It's beautiful. As much as you have each advocated for Jews, you've also celebrated being Jewish publicly, displaying Jewish joy, which is so important and is, the other side of this coin that we can't just be defending against hate. We have to be celebrating what we love about being Jewish and putting that out there. Josh, one of the things you've done recently is written an award-winning Jewish comic book series called The Writer. Please tell us about The Writer, how you got involved, what it's about, the whole shebang.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to something because
let's do that first.
No, because it's fascinating to me. And I keep reminding myself of this. It's like, the hoops that we have to jump through, we represent 0.1% of the global population. Why do we have to do all this work to just be who we are?
You mean like the mental Jenga?
Just you have to do this and you have to do this and you can't do this because then this will happen. And it's like, leave us alone. Let us be.
That's
Let us be.
I was talking to an executive at TikTok, and he was like, one of the reasons the counter messaging is so overwhelming is because they have a charge, Free Palestine, and he was like, the Jews don't have anyone. I was like, can ours just be leave us alone?
Yeah, hashtag. It's been thousands of years.
Right.
All we want is to make some
give it
kugel.
a rest.
We just want a schluff and enough.
We love a schluffy.
What was your question?
The writer.
The writer. I did a comic book series with these brilliant writers, the Berkowitz brothers, who they're amazing.
One person knows the Berkowitz brothers.
Berkowitz. And they came to me and they said, we want to do a story that celebrates the Jewish faith and that celebrates Jewish mythology. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a masterpiece. And part of the reason I think it's so damn compelling is because it has a monopoly on Jewish myth and Old Testament mythology. And if you go back into the scriptures, there's some really interesting, incredible, powerful stuff in there that is ripe for storytelling. And I was like, this is great. And the premise is that this writer, basically every time he writes a word on a piece of parchment and consumes that, he then embodies the power on that piece of parchment. And I just loved that idea, and it's really connected with the zeitgeist. It's we've sold out of all of our initial copies, and we have the trade paperback coming out in March, and it's just been a thrill to get to tell that kind of story in a new form. And one of my favorite stories ever is The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon.
Amazing book.
And I wanted to, also pay tribute to all of the incredible Jewish artists who created some of the most iconic comic book characters of all time. So that was a big part of it as well.
Amazing. Marlee, I found on Instagram you posted a video last Hanukkah celebrating Hanukkah, eating gelt. Why was something like that important to you to showcase?
I love celebrating Hanukkah because it's 8 days of gifts. And I found weed one day, as you said. But no, I'm just kidding. I love my childhood growing up with Jewish traditions in Martin Grove, Illinois. And the times that I spent in temple on Fridays, sometimes on Saturdays, often on Sundays, the way that my parents truly exposed every aspect of the Jewish holidays to me was it just brings great joy, and they're great memories. And lighting the candles, the festive aspect of Hanukkah, it just moves me. Just cherishing our religion, simple as that, or Judaism, and never forgetting our ancestors.
I love that. Jenny, you have been rocking lots of Jewish jewelry, Jewish jean jackets. Yeah, you posted an amazing photo of you carrying a Torah from your bat mitzvah. That photo was great. If you want to check out Jenny's Instagram, what's your approach to showcasing Jewish joy? How do you think about it, or is it something you think about?
I mean, it's kind of all I think about in terms of posting and social media. And I've had friends recently ask me, like, but what about, work and all and to me, there's nothing as important as this. Everything else sort of pales in comparison. So everything to me is about opportunities I don't look for the opportunities, but I feel like they keep coming, opportunities to celebrate and share. And it's that thing for me always about like giving permission, letting people know like that I think that just saying like, I am Jewish is like what
Seriously.
it's like, okay, yeah, is one of the most, I don't know, it's like the most important first step. And so I feel like I'm repeatedly trying to show people that first step.
Yeah, I love that. I relate to that a lot. Okay, so now I want to take it to Hollywood, the industry in which we all work. Super liberal community, but by and large has been mostly silent in this time on the hostages, on anti-Jewish hate in this country. Josh, you spoke about that a little bit earlier tonight, but how does that feel, and why do you think it's happening?
It doesn't feel great. It's heartbreaking, It's heartbreaking because a lot of times I will actually reach out to the community and conveniently not hear back. If it's another issue, I hear back very quickly.
Right.
And that sends a message. I think that sends its own message. Even the simple task of, hey guys, not sure if you've noticed lately, but a lot of people hate Jews. Can you help tell people not to? You would think that that's an easy ask. Not so much, it turns out. And a lot of times there's an excuse, right? And it goes back to, I'm tired of people telling me what anti-Semitism is and isn't, is the amount, and I'm sure a lot of you experience this, the amount of people who Jew-splain to me why what I'm asking is not easy. Well, it's complicated.
Yeah.
No, this is not complicated. No, I'm not asking you to not speak out on what's happening to innocent Gazans. I'm not asking that. I'm not telling you to make a choice. I'm asking you as a Jew to stand up when you see somebody getting their head bashed in New York City. That's not hard. I'm not telling you to make a choice. You're choosing to make a choice. That's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And we have been trained by social media to think in terms of football matches. You're on Team Palestine, you're on Team Israel. I'm on Team fucking humanity. Always have been, always will be. Be a human. Yeah. Nobody deserves to suffer. Nobody deserves to live in fear. Nobody. And I'm not telling you not to advocate for everyone. I'm just asking you to remember that everyone includes Jews.
That's right. We are fully capable of handling complex issues and holding multiple truths at the same time.
I want to. We should.
We are able to, but as you said, sort of society has pushed us into this false paradigm where so many feel they need to pick a side. It has to be polarized, and it doesn't.
But by the way, have you met, I mean, not to be self-righteous about us, but I'm gonna, I also haven't met a Jew who's choosing a side. Everyone is on the human, all the Jews I know, everyone I talk to is on the human side.
Yeah, I think a part of it is, again, I think there's ignorance. I think a lot of,
for sure,
there's a lot of ignorance. My rabbi, shout out to my rabbi, Rabbi Sharon Brous, who's the most badass rabbi in the universe. She said something during her sermon during Yom Kippur that really stood out to me. Shouting about the rights of Gazans and the right to free Palestine is not anti-Semitic. It's simply not. Shouting it at a Jew going to temple is anti-Semitic. And that's the distinction that I think people are forgetting. And I think it's important to remember that when you start to paint a group with any brush, regardless of what group that is, it's wrong.
It's textbook bigotry.
It's textbook bigotry.
Yep.
And I see these kids going to halal houses and terrified. And I'm just scratching my head going, what? Where are some of these kids brought up that their parents don't tell them, no, it's not okay to do this to anyone? Do you know what I would do if my daughter went up to a Muslim kid and made them feel unsafe? You wouldn't see her for a week. She'd be punished.
Yeah.
Punish your fucking kids. Teach them right from wrong. This isn't hard. This is called decency. Stop pointing at a group of people who have nothing to do with the issue that you are upset about and saying it's their fault because they are just like all of them.
Yeah. Don't
do that to anyone. Any race, religion, nobody deserves that.
No doubt. Sticking with the Hollywood theme, what are your guys' feelings about Jewish representation today in Hollywood, both in terms of the way things are being cast and in the stories that are being told? Do you feel like things are in a good place? Is there room for improvement?
For me, my first television show, I played a character named Tess Kaufman, and I was as Jewish as they come. But there was nothing really, they didn't go into depth about her being Jewish. It was a character that I played. On the L Word, I played a deaf Jewish lesbian, but there was nothing really specific about her Judaism. I haven't played a character that really went into depth into their Judaism, but I've always wanted to do Jewish story, like a Hanukkah story for Hallmark. I've tried, and they're like, not so much, and they sort of turned down the ideas that I've had. I've made attempts. There's so many great ideas and stories having to do with that space, but no takers. What can you do? So that's Hallmark for you, but anyway. Double whammy, deaf and Jewish, okay?
What about you two? Have either of you any thought about this at all, or
my
experienced
gosh, yes.
something
Both
about
trying to get cast on Nobody Wants This season
Yep,
2.
boy, are we. We are available. I mean, I would like to see more Jewish representation in general. And I'm not saying that there are not enough Jews in Hollywood, but the truth is there's never been a survey. There's no mechanism thus far for self-identifying as being Jewish, so we actually have no concept of what our representation is as far as in the workforce. But I would certainly love for there to be more representation on screen, and I would like it to not be so much about, I feel like the bulk of things seem to be about people like escaping from orthodoxy and freeing themselves from the shackles of Judaism, which I'm just exhausted from. And I would like to see being Jewish just more normalized. I would like to have more, mezuzot, and I would like for there to be more kippot. And I'm just trying to show you how many words in Hebrew I can pluralize accurately. I would like to see as many Hanukkah as I do. Thank you. That's not plural, but wait, Hanukkiot? Yeah. No, that's still. Yes. I did it. As we see Christmas trees in movies, and just have it be normalized. I mean, I feel like we're trying to even do this at our elementary school right now with just normalizing, the fact that when you have the Winterfest, there's also some latkes. And so I would like that to be, yes, everywhere.
Come to my house. Come to my house.
A nice segue into just a little tidbit. You and I are working on a project together.
Yes, we are.
Which is a Jewish forward narrative, contemporary Jews just being Jews, called The Mensch. Can you tell us a little bit about what drew you specifically to that project?
Well, I think it is about. I mean, our central character is a rabbi that I am not playing, but our central character is a rabbi, and it is. I don't know how much I can say.
Say whatever.
Okay, and we are searching for a Holocaust era Torah, and chaos ensues. But though that is the case, I still feel like it's not a story about being Jewish.
Right, it's a story about people who are Jewish.
Yes, your characters happen to be Jewish and leading with Jewish values, but it's not about being Jewish. And there's something that was so unusually dynamic about that, because I have read a number of Jewish scripts this year, and I am ecstatic that there is seemingly a focus on developing. I mean, I hope that they all move forward, but a focus on trying to get these projects developed. But this was the script that I felt like was all the things. It was a brilliant movie, on top of being Jewish leaning.
Right, which is, exactly what I had been advocating for even before I got involved with this project, was stories about people being people, and those people are Jewish, and this is their life. Yes. Yeah, I think that's super important. All right, we're getting close to the end here, but I do want to mention, I know it's sitting on the table there. There's
a water bottle.
This water bottle. Please tell us about
hydrate.
it. There's a book there. It's called "In Gad We Trust," which is a total home run title, by the way. You told me in the pre-meeting for this, there's a Jewish chapter. So why don't you tell us a little bit?
Can I read an excerpt?
Oh, please.
So this felt like kismet. The book is coming out January 14th, but tonight's conversation I speak about this in the book, and I thought it was worthwhile if you guys, is it okay if I read a little section? I just think it's on point, and I want to read you this piece that it stays with me about my grandfather. I once asked my grandfather if he believed in God. I assume because he always sent me to temple every Saturday and kept a kosher house for most of his life, the answer would be obvious and in the affirmative. However, less than a second after I asked that question, he tersely answered back, no. I stared at him in disbelief. Why? Because, he continued, no God would have put me through the hell that I had to endure. No God would allow my family to all be murdered in cold blood for no reason. No God would have taken my entire youth from me as I fought to simply not starve to death or be shot or gassed? The answer was both shocking and yet so obvious. I'd always taken for granted that his mere survival meant a renewal of his faith, never once contemplating that the horrors he had to endure to survive could simply mean proof of an absence of God in his weary eyes. As I pondered his answer, however, I suddenly became incredibly confused by a simple set of facts. Why for 90 plus years had he continued to worship if he felt this way? Why would he go to temple every week, celebrate every holiday, insist on his children and grandchildren doing all of the Jewish traditional rites of passage, from brisses and baby namings to bar and bat mitzvahs? How could a person who didn't believe in God pray to that God publicly and celebrate in his name again and again? I couldn't for the life of me understand. Papa, why then, if you don't believe in any of it, do you continue to do all of the things that identify you as being a practicing Jew? He looked me square in the eyes and smiled a crooked grin. Because, Josh, it's all I know. So what the hell else am I going to do? Tradition, identity, and guilt. The perfect recipe for a card-carrying Jew. I am destined to never fully embrace and never fully withdraw. My and my descendants' journey with Judaism is inevitable and familiar. It will be the same as those who for thousands of years have asked similar questions and arrived at similar answers. Despite the pain, despite the aggravation, despite the never-ending hate from others and from ourselves, we are who we are. Because whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, I am a Jew. What the hell else am I going to do? So if you feel like me, buy my book on the 14th.
It's actually, there's a copy for each of you under your seats. No, there's not, sorry. People are going to...
No, there isn't. I'm a Jew.
Hey. People are going to like jump ahead listening to this episode and think they've stumbled into the audiobook of In God We Trust. All right, so to bring us home, we're going to do something we like to do on the show. It's a little lightning round. So we'll just go one at a time. I'll ask the question. You could just throw them out. It's easy. These are easy ones. These are the real softballs. Favorite Jewish holiday?
Hanukkah.
Passover.
Passover.
Interesting. Least favorite Jewish holiday? Yeah, I'm with Marlee. I'm like, Passover. That's like the stuffiest and the longest.
Passover least. Passover
it's like
least.
our Thanksgiving, just with less bread.
Yeah. Least favorite Jewish holiday?
Passover.
Easter. I cannot think of one. I mean, I really think they're all...
That's a good answer. That counts.
Do you know what's funny? It used to be Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Because,
You're
guys,
fast.
I hate fasting. For those listeners at home, just to look up a picture. But I've really come to adore Yom Kippur lately. I think post the 7th, it's actually maybe weirdly become my favorite holiday. It's just a day of reflection.
Yeah.
So least favorite, I never got Sukkot. I just never understood why we're wasting so many twigs and lemons.
Lemons.
I make a mean kugel for any Jewish holiday.
Hey, all right. You're invited. You're invited over.
Raisins or no raisins?
No.
Okay, we ask this all the time on the show. Challah, rip or slice?
Oh.
Yeah. Rip.
What she said.
Rip.
If you come with a knife to a challah party, you better come with a gun. Because I will not let you get away with that.
I am so in the minority of having like grown up with people slicing the challah.
it's
Like nobody
forbidden.
slices challah.
No, we used to rip it apart
Rip
and
it.
throw it.
Rip it.
What is your Jewish deli order?
What do I order from
Yeah, what do
Jewish
you
deli?
order when you go?
Matzo ball soup.
Classic.
Matzo ball soup and a knish.
Hey.
Oh, God, give me some good New York bagels and lox. I mean, I love me a good... all I want after I fast on the holidays is just a bagel and some dead smoked fish.
Bam.
That's all I want. Some good cream cheese. That's all I want.
You're invited to our house. That's what we have every year.
That's what every Jew
Not
has.
Not all of them. Not all of them.
I'm coming.
What is one of your favorite Jewish values?
Family.
I was always taught that, and I don't know what you'd call this, maybe tikkun olam, but that it was not about how we. I remember distinctly learning this lesson in Hebrew school as a young person, that it is not about how we feel about anything, it's about what we do.
Josh?
Community. I mean, this.
Yeah, pretty great. Feels good.
Community.
My rabbi always said, I always listened to him, I love thy neighbor. That's what my rabbi used to always say. Love that.
Classic. Favorite Yiddish word?
Oy vey.
Oy vey. Yeah, oh yeah, big time.
I'm gonna keep with the
And I'm a booby officially.
Hey, Mazel Tov.
I'm gonna stick with my bris theme and say schmuck.
Hey, nice.
You know what schmuck really means.
Josh?
I love chutzpah.
Yeah.
Chutzpah is just it's got so many consonants in it.
A lot to chew on.
It's so much.
What is one thing you wish the world understood about Jews or Israel?
That we are human beings.
I've done a lot of what is a Jew presentations since, by the way, 4th grade. And the thing that I find most fascinating is that we are just incapable, I think, like on a world stage, it's very hard for people to understand this concept of our being an ethnicity and a tribe and a religion and all of the things that every group of people used to be thousands of years ago. You were the religion of your community before we had the borders that we have now and defined countries and states in the way that we do. You were all of these same things. We just happened to be like one of the only tribes that survived.
Yep. Josh?
I think those are both beautiful answers,
Yeah,
actually.
excellent.
I love that we're just people is sort of it, isn't it? Like, that's the whole ball game. Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, any parting bit of advice or inspiration or call to action for our audience?
Call your mother.
Very Jewish advice.
Call your mother. Just be kind. Be kind.
Fabulous.
And it's past my bedtime.
Okay, Jenny, bring us home.
You know what? I'm just going to steal from Brett Stevens and let's go with everybody. Just go for a 10% more Jewish and we'll be good.
Boom. A huge thank you to each of our incredible panelists for their honesty, advocacy, and being with me here tonight. Thanks to G2 and Rainbow Creative for making us look and sound great. Thank you to everybody here at the amazing CBS Television City for hosting us so graciously. A massive thank you to Jewish Federation Los Angeles and every individual, lay and professional, who worked so hard to make tonight possible. Especially my good friend and entertainment co-chair Jacob Fenton and the singular Steven Singer, without whom none of this would have happened. Oh yeah. This was such a blast. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you all next time for the next unbelievable episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt. Give it up for our panelists.